Record.
All right. I think we're going to have Olivia's camera up here in a second. There we go. Good morning, Olivia.
Hey, Van.
All righty, guys. Well, welcome to our national leaders call, as we call it, Leadership Masterclass. And we're here once again with another great speaker today. As you guys have been listening in over the last few weeks, there's been a ton of topics regarding team building, team culture, which has been really, really important, especially in this time of the year with the recruiting that's going on and you guys are building your teams. Creating that team identity is really, really important. Well, today, I love Olivia's topic because really this focuses on developing yourself even before you develop your team and really improving yourself in every aspect that you can, becoming the best version of yourself. And Olivia is going to go over a ton of different subjects regarding that today, which we're really, really excited about. A couple updates, guys. Yesterday, we did a call with a lot of the owners that kind of help decide the topics and the speakers. And one of the ideas that Anthony Puglia brought up was creating a sort of a hub where leaders and owners can access all of these calls and all of the information on these calls. And because there's been so many good speakers, so many good topics, and even though the Zoom recordings are sent out usually the day of, we want to give everybody access to this at all times. So what Maddie did was create a whole topic or a whole item regarding this in an app called Slack. So if you're not familiar with Slack, it's a free app to download. It's free to create an account. All owners and leaders can gain access to this app. And inside that app, all the videos for all the history of this leaders call are going to be accessible through there. And I know Maddie's also going to be creating a private YouTube channel that you're going to need an access code to get into. So that's great. You guys are going to have access to go back. Owners, leaders, if you missed a call and you want to catch up on some of them, you'll be able to go into the Slack app and access them, which is really, really exciting. And I know Elise is contacting all of the speakers who have already spoken, and they're going to actually send over their slideshows. So there's going to be sort of PDFs that you can even download, print out, and have like a little manual of all of these different leaders topics. Because once again, guys, this is Leadership Masterclass. All the topics that are being discussed are topics coming from the best owners in our business who are applying these subjects to their own offices, and it's why they're becoming successful and why they're kicking ass. So anyways, let's get into our speaker today. Olivia, we're really excited about your topic. Currently right now, Olivia is in New York. Are you still in Lake Success? Is that the city you're in?
No, well, we're around there. We're in Garden City, which is like 10 minutes away.
Got it. So she's in Garden City, New York. She's got a promotion this year. She's got another promotion on the way. And she has a great story, which we'll get into. But as you guys know, we like to get a little bit of a background of each of our speakers so you guys can kind of get to know them better and see how diverse our ownership group is, which it really is. It's super diverse. Olivia, you are not on the path to get into sales or marketing. You were originally getting into nursing, and you completed 2 years of nursing school. What happened? What made you change your mind and start looking in other directions?
So yeah, I was in full-time. I was, going to school for nursing. I got, like we were talking about earlier. And, I guess like a couple of things like ended up kind of like changing my direction. If someone asked me like before if I was going to ever get into like sales or, like 100% commission, I'd be like, oh no, like I can't do that. Right. But while I was in school full-time for nursing, I was also working full-time, to pay for school. And I experienced different industries in, retail, the banking world, also like, on the sides, I was doing like bartending, bottle waitressing, and, all these like corporate jobs that, I had while I was in school full time. I knew that like, there's no way that I want to sit at a desk all day and, take orders from someone and like clock in, clock out. And then while I was in school full time for nursing, I loved the education background of it. Like it was so cool, like learning about the human body and like how things work. But then when I really pictured myself like going to a hospital, like wearing a scrub every day and like being around people that were in pain or sick people or having to deliver bad news to family members, like to me, those cons weighed out the pros tremendously. So I didn't take classes during the summer, and then I was looking for another full-time position because I was so miserable sitting at the desk all day. I was like, I have to do something else, because not only am I not sure what I want to do as far as this as a career, but let me do some like soul searching and kind of see what else, what other experiences that I could that I could take on and maybe learn more about myself. And I found, came on an interview here, and, I sat down with my leader, my manager. I heard about, basically the growth process and, how much managers, can make running their locations. And I was just like, worst case scenario, I give this a shot and I suck. Best case scenario, I give this a shot and I'm able to accomplish what they're talking about for an entry level 2 to 6 weeks, and maybe get good at this where I could maybe do something with this long term. So I just came in open-minded because my back was already against the wall, so I was not really happy anyway. So I was just like, I got nothing to lose, so here we are.
Yeah. Well, you had an interesting journey. You started out in cosmetics, which is a program that we have, but that's not what you're doing now. That program kind of changed. You eventually moved to Verizon and had to start from scratch building. You already spent, less than a year in the field, but you had to start from scratch and rebuild again. You did it, you rebuilt, got to management, you got past 10 guys. We kind of hear this story a lot where right before COVID happened, a lot of people were hitting their stride. You're in the same situation. You became an owner late 2019. COVID happened. You had to rebuild again. And so then, I think you were telling me too, you were kind of struggling getting past 10 guys. And then after COVID happened, when you had to rebuild, you really had to reflect and figure out, okay, what am I doing in this business? What are my goals? What do I got to change about myself in order to get better results? And since then, you've had a great run. You promoted Chris, who's now an owner in your building. You got Jesse's about to get promoted. And I know when you're
Today.
putting promotion, I'm sorry,
We're promoting him today.
promoting him today. That's
Yeah.
great. And now, now with these promotions going out, you're kind of in that rebuild mode again, which is exciting because now you're working with the new leaders. And, you had to really go against the grain, especially with your family and stuff, to say, hey, I'm not going to do nursing anymore. I'm going to go do this commission sales job. And, there's a lot of pressure to say, hey, you're crazy. You need to go do something safe. Where did that sort of ambition or risk taker part of you come from to have that sort of belief and determination to stick with something, even when you had people telling you you're crazy, you shouldn't do it? Where did that come from?
So yeah, so like we were talking about, before. So like I have a twin sister who's like my best friend, right? And like when I first started, and I'm super close with my mom, and my mom and dad separated when I was like really young. I was like 3, so I always grew up like, kind of in between, like, the mess between those two, fighting for custody and all that, all these other things, right? So like when I basically, I think where it started from was just like watching, the examples that my parents, portrayed to me as like, I basically just watched them suffer. Like I watched them suffer financially. Like I watched them, have to like, fight for everything. Like, we couldn't go on field trips and like certain school trips and like events because like, they just said, we don't have the money for that. Right. Or we don't have the money to, what to do, what, for all these, extracurricular activities that you want to do, like we would have to pay for it. Right. So I think it was a combination of like, I guess being intelligent enough to like at a young age to see like how I didn't want to live, right? And also the fact, as well too, like like I guess like from playing sports and like I guess like being like pretty competitive, right? And just like I guess kind of just like knowing what I wanted at a young age, which was to not live like that and to like to create a different lifestyle for myself and my future family. I was telling you yesterday, like my first 2 weeks, like, my, in the business, my sister was like sending me, all these, different like, articles about direct sales, like how it's a scam, like, it's not, they're lying to you, right? And you're like, it's not true. They're just saying that, but it doesn't actually happen. And I was like, I was 2 weeks in and I was just like, oh my gosh, like what's going on, right? And then, I really took a seat back. I obviously sat down with my manager and kind of broke down that like people don't go out of their way, to write positive things about companies online. They don't go out of their way. And, because our industry, right, if it was easy, to get promoted to management, to run your own business in 6 to 9 months or 9 months to a year, everyone would be doing it. So when it doesn't work out for some people, right, some people don't leave with like, maybe they don't leave as, as happy or, or they just weren't willing to make changes they had to, and they go online and they write certain things. And I was smart enough to understand that as well too, right? I was like, okay, well that makes sense too. So I think it's just, and then also taking a step back and seeing like, my financial situation that my mom was in, my dad was in, and them telling you what they think I should do, going, graduating high school and being like, go to school for the medical field, you'll be a great nurse. Like, I knew personally I would be great at whatever I put my mind to because that's the confidence that I had. But, I gave it a shot. Like I said, I liked it. But then just like thinking about, okay, so, I've always watched them struggle financially, professionally, like they never really kept like a long-term career, right? Like my mom was in the mortgage industry, she was in sales, right? But she never like really took it to the next level. And my dad was always like bouncing, from different industries, whether it's like a paralegal or whatever the case is. And, he was also struggling financially as well too. So I was like, what I'm going to do is I basically told them to they were so angry. They were like, especially they were like, what are you doing? Like, you're being overworked, go back to nursing school. Like, this probably not going to work out. Like, you shouldn't be working this hard. You look tired. And I was just like, okay, like, I'd rather look tired than live the way you do, right? I'd rather be tired than, be in the situation that you're in when I'm your age, right? So I didn't say that to them, but that's how I felt inside. So I just basically told them, hey, listen, like, just back off, right? Like, stop asking me to go back to nursing school, because it's not going to happen. Because I know if I quit this, I'm always going to be wondering what I could have done just because I decided to do what you told me to do. So why don't you just give me a year? Give me about a year. Give me 6 months. And, a year from now, if I'm in the same situation, I'll be like, okay, like, maybe it's not working. But a year from now, if, I'm in a different situation, whether I'm growing personally, professionally, financially, then, we're going to have a different conversation. But you got to just pump the brakes. And, they left me alone, and they weren't happy about it. But I think it's just because of like what I saw growing up, and what I saw the lifestyle I didn't want to live.
Yeah,
So
it's tough to not be influenced by the people that raised us, or the people
yeah.
that are around us, because they many times they're just telling us stuff because they care. They just want
Mhm.
us to. They're giving us the best advice they can, and then in life sometimes you meet people, whether it's mentors or people through business. They're just in situations you want to be in, and you got to meet Jess Irish and her husband, and see this life that they were able to build, and it
Mhm.
must have been attractive to you to see where she was at her age, and
Mhm.
her becoming a big influence in your career. It's just, we always say, like, sometimes, as a mentor, you meet people, you can change their life, but also those people can change your life. So it's been mutually, that type of beneficial situation for you guys. And boy, I'm sure your parents are proud now, and now you're running your own business, and you're really, turning the corner in your career, which is exciting. So, and I know for you, the big reason why you've been able to improve in the business and have a great year coming back from COVID is because you really worked on yourself. And that's the topic today. And for all the leaders that are on the call, take notes. Please fire questions in the chat. If you know there's other leaders that might know about the call, but they have not done yet, shoot them a text message, have them hop on. And we're going to try to, get as many questions answered today as well. But Olivia, you can bring up your PowerPoint, and let's start rocking and rolling.
All right, cool. So, let me share my screen first, right? Step one, share this, and okay.
And you go view. Maddie walked us through it. There we go.
Okay. So yes, so the name of the topic is obviously developing the best version of you. That's kind of what I wanted to go over when Jess was asking me kind of what I wanted to share with everyone, because I know for me personally, right? If anyone asks, like, like, I guess, like, what works to help you get to your goals, like, and ultimately for the leaders, obviously the goal is to qualify for management. Hopefully, obviously that's the goal. And whatever goals you have in management is to be, financially free, to have more freedom, to take care, provide for your family, live a certain lifestyle, make a lot of money in management, to be able to like hit the goals that, or invest in some future things that you want long term, but you need money, right? But the beauty about this business, right? Like, you learn how to, you make a lot, you have capital, so you can invest in things long term. So whatever your goals are, right? I realize, or I continue to realize, like, the more that you're reflecting on yourself, and the more that you're kind of picking, I know Mike Lay says it all the time, like picking your own scabs, and like dissecting things or ways that you could be better, those ultimately kind of get you to your goal, right? And it also, and whatever the goals are, like I said, financially, whether your goals are to have successful relationships, to like I said, to be worth, a certain amount financially as well too, to live a certain lifestyle. And that's, all starts with us, right? Especially in this industry, because we're in the people building industry. We work with people. In order for me to attract and be able to influence certain people, I have to make sure that I'm working on being that best version, so I'm able to coach others to that same level as well too. So ultimately, it's going to help you, find success, whatever your path is, whether it's, finances, lifestyle, relationships, right? And I'm saying personal, family, friend relationships, whatever the case is, right? And obviously, ultimately, the goal is to get promoted to management. Um, so first thing that I want to break down for everyone is really dissecting the person that you want to attract in your life, right? So I broke it down in a couple of different categories that I can think of, right? Which is like habits, professionalism, image, and just overall discipline, right? So this is a topic that I talk about a lot, with our team here is, I again, if I want to, if I'm in leadership, right, and I want to attract a certain person, or if I could picture, the type of people that I have on my team, right, I want to picture, how do they carry themselves professionally, right? Like, how do they walk, talk, stand, how do they speak, right? How, their image, do they care about, their presence, right? Especially in direct sales, right? We're talking to people, on a daily basis, we're recruiting people on a daily basis, right? Like, so obviously looking the part is important. First impression is huge, right? And just overall habits, right? Like picturing the type of habits that, and discipline that you want your team members to have, right? Like, do you want, people on your team that you have to constantly, check them on, like, coming in early or not being late, right? Or being organized, or having their notebooks, or having their territories mapped, right? Having their cars cleaned, right? Making sure, like, their personal life is not a mess either, right? And really, like, taking a step back and, asking yourself, is that person you, right? So all these traits and things that you want your office to have, right, or the people on your team, you want them to have, it's the first questions you want to ask yourself, like, do I portray those characteristics, do I portray those habits, right? Do I portray that professionalism, the discipline, the image, right? So I think that's important, is because ultimately, once you start to really, again, keep asking yourself, is that me? You just start attracting those people, right? You start attracting, the caliber of person that you wouldn't be able to when you were first in leadership, right? Because you're just constantly working on you, right? And then ultimately, when you're attracting people that have discipline, great habits, and they're easy to mold, they're easy to train. And if they're easy to mold and they're easy to train, you're probably going to qualify for management a lot faster, because you're working on being the best version of you, right? So I put a little quote on here, from John Maxwell, because this book, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, was huge for me when I going through the process. And obviously, like, I still go back to it, but it was big for me. And he talks about the first law is the law of the lid, right? So leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. So the lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid of his or her potential. So basically, what he breaks down in this first law is, rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 in leadership. Right. So if you, and honestly, rate, or if you don't trust to rate yourself, have somebody else rate you. Right. And if you fall between like a 6 or 7 in leadership with these categories of habits, professionalism, image, discipline, and consistently maintaining that, right, and you fall between like a 6 or 7, chances are you're probably going to only attract maybe someone on the level of 4 to 5. Right. Now, if you fall between, 4 or 5, then you're probably going to track, anywhere between anyone on the level between, like, 2 and 3, which, chances are you probably don't want to work with those people, right? But again, if you're constantly making the effort to be that 10, right, and to be at that level, right? Again, if you don't trust yourself, have somebody else that's better than you rate you, then you're going to attract tens and 10 plus at that point, right? Which is ultimately going to help you get to where you want to be, especially in this industry, because team building, working with people, different types of people. So the law of the lid, rating yourself, and again, it's a good exercise to do on like a weekly, monthly basis, right? To kind of see where you stand. And ultimately, you can kind of look at the people on your crew and really be like, okay, right, so like, I'm proud of like everyone that's on my team. I'm proud of who represents me as a leader, which means you're doing a good job. And if you're not, it just means that we have some work we have to do in these categories. So that's this one.
And it also seems like, when leaders ask questions, one of the most common questions like newer leaders ask is, how do they motivate people, right? How do they get people to be better students? How do they get people to work as hard as them? How do they get people to have as good of attitudes? And sometimes people look at themselves like, man, I'm just so different than my team.
Mhm.
And they're kind of wondering, how do they fix those people? When reality is, you just have to make sure that you're the best in all these categories, and you're going to attract those types of people, right? So
Yeah.
when you want your team to be a better student, well, you've got to be a good example of what it is to be a student, right? Taking notes in the meeting, getting with your manager, asking lots of questions. If you want your team to work harder, then you got to work harder. You got to go extra mile on Sundays. You got to make sure you're working the full day. And same things goes with all these categories. So what I love about this first slide, it just kind of puts it all on yourself first, to be the people that you would want to attract, right? Be the people that you'd want on your team. So I love it. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, and also this is also goes hand in hand, not just with team building, right? Which is why I love this topic, because this you can use this personally as well too, right? So for the guys and girls, what like if you like the significant other that you have in your mind, like who you want to attract, right? Like you want them to look a certain way, you want them to hold themselves to a certain standard, right? And you want them to be, to have like a certain financial status, right? But then like you have to you have to attract that person, right? And again, asking yourself, are you that person, right? Because if you are, then you're gonna attract the same person, right? In your relationships, and also in your professional life as well too. So I just wanted to add that.
Cool. That's great.
Cool. All right. So next one is having this. Sorry, I'm trying to read that here. So having this the desire to never be the same person you were a year ago. That's not in the way, right? Okay. So this is huge. I know like one of like personally my biggest fears is like being in the same exact situation that I'm in a year from now, right? So and this just shows one's like ability to be a student, right? A leader's ability to be a student. So next year from now, if I'm working on the same things that I was working on a year ago, I'm capping myself. I'm not being a student, right? I'm being closed-minded or fixed-minded, and I'm just set in my ways, right? And I have to make the changes, right? So for example, like I don't want to be in the same situation, like professionally, right? If I'm say like in leadership, if I'm still working on how to like retrain and set the pace, right? Or I'm still working on perfecting my interviews, and I'm still working on showing up on time, I'm still working on my organizational skills and my habits. Next year, there's no way that I want to be still working on those same exact things that I'm working on right now. My financial situation, if I suck at finances and if I suck at managing money, right? Next year, I do not want to be working on that same exact topic, right? Because it just shows my ability to evolve as a person, right? And this is so big for guys, and girls that get promoted to leadership, right? So like anyone could, qualify for leadership by hitting a bunch of sales numbers, right? Like I hit a bunch of sales numbers, I do teach backs, and then boom, I qualify for leadership, right? But usually what happens when, just because you have that title as leader, like we stop working on ourselves, right? Like we stop networking. We think that we kind of have it all figured out, right? Like, like I know how to set the pace in the field, right? Like, like I have, I promote my first leader, right? And because I promote my first leader, like I got this down, like I'm going to get promoted to management. And then we stop, we almost got have that like I've arrived mentality. And that is the second you go backwards in your program, because it's happened to me before. And I didn't do it like an intentional way, because I just had to realize that like in leadership, especially in this program in general, which is what, which is what I love, like you have to continuously work on evolving yourself as a person and as a leader, right? So how do I get better at, maybe instead of managing 5 people, managing 10 people, right? How do I get better at my conversations? How do I sharpen my interview, right? But like me just, kind of, getting promoted and just like just wait, almost like waiting for things to happen, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide. I'm not going to evolve. So even I could kind of relate to this, right? I remember like the first couple leaders that I built, right? Or my first team that I had, like some of the conversations that I had with them when I would like just like talk about all the things that they were doing wrong versus like, and like, just like how their mentality was just not on point versus anything that they were doing right. And like I think about that like, even like now, like years later, I'm like, oh my God, why did I say that? Right. Like, no wonder why those people are not here anymore. Right. But if I'm not able to like every single person that, I lose, or any single person that falls off the crew, I'm not able to kind of dissect like different approaches or things that I could have done different to make sure I avoid that next time, then I'm not gonna kind of I guess like raise the potential of my leadership. And like I said, ultimately just making sure that we're evolving as people,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
What do you think is the main reason, like why people get stuck? Like, when you look at someone, whether it's an owner or whether it's a leader, where you feel like they feel like they're stuck in the mud, whether a year goes by or 3 months go by or 6 months go by and their situation hasn't changed? What do you think is the main cause of that versus people who drastically get ahead? Because you guys know in our business, this is not an equal playing field. There's people that will pass by, from leaders to assistant managers to owners to become RCs and NCs, and other people will kind of stay in the same place for a long time. What do you think the reason is why those people get stuck versus why people will get ahead faster?
I think it's I like kind of going back to what I was saying. I think it's because, they just stop being they just stop being students, and they just stop working as hard as they did to get them to that position in the first place. Like, let's say qualifying for leadership or even assistant management too. Like that's like a that's like kind of a sensitive area as well too, because people, like, they work so hard to qualify for assistant management or leadership, and then boom, they just stop working on themselves. They stop networking. They stop like evaluating things that they could do better, and they almost just take their foot off the gas. I just think they just, again, that desire to like want to get better is not there as much, right? Almost like they're just expecting for things to kind of just happen at this point, and it happens to the best of us, right? But like, you have to check yourself fast when you see that happening, right? So I think it's just that we just stop being students. We stop asking questions. We stop coming in early. We stop picking the brains of someone that's newer, that's doing better than us, right? Or someone that has a bigger team than us. So, or reading books, or, getting up early, or, kind of educating ourselves outside of just the business on like current events and what we don't, what else is going on. So
It also seems like people, they kind of they get a little bit entitled, right? Like they feel
yeah.
like they're owed something because they put in a certain amount of time. And also they lose that little fear of loss, right? When you're
Mhm.
new, you got something to prove, you got a chip on your shoulder. And once you get a victory under your belt, you're like, all right, I'm supposed to be here. So now things are supposed to come to me. And when you don't have that same fire and that same chip on your shoulder, like everybody hates to hear about how Tom Brady won another Super Bowl. The guy just keeps a chip on his shoulder. He keeps the fire going no
Mhm.
matter how much success he has. He pretends like he's the rookie that was drafted in the 6th or 7th round that has to prove himself. So I think it's important, whether you're a leader on this call or whoever, you got to kind of remember the mindset you were in when you're accomplishing things, and you got to recreate that continuously throughout your career, because that's what the best do. They just always get in that mode like they got something to lose. So I love the fact that you hit on that.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, don't be the same person you were today next year from now. Okay. All right. So getting out of your comfort zone will ultimately get you the position that you want versus the position that you have, right? So this is huge. Again, and this is big for like, again, kind of the topic that we were going over, in leadership, right? Like, again, guys and girls work really hard to hit a qualification in leadership, but there's a reason why there's only a certain percentage of people in leadership actually get promoted to management, right? Is because one or two things happens when one person gets promoted to leadership. So you have leader A that gets promoted, and they are doing everything in their power to stand out from the pack, right? So they came in an entry level, and they want to be the best they want to be the person that stood out in the field. They want to get their name called out. They want to high roll, right? And then when they get promoted to leadership, they want to be the best in that, in leadership as well too. They want to be the best in their office. They want to be the first one there. They want to be the best at interviews, right? They want to be the person that's the best at running impacts, right? Or have the biggest team, whatever the case is. It's because that they're constantly like pushing themselves to like, all right, like, let me do this interview, right? Let me run this impact, right? Versus leader B, right, when they get promoted, they're like, okay, like kind of almost like in that coasting mode, where they're like, okay, like, I'll just wait for my manager to like kind of like give me second rounds. I'll just wait for someone to ask me to run an impact. I'll just wait my turn until so when I can start retraining people, right? One thing that you hear from leaders, right, is like, when you, like, if your manager or somebody else or another leader comes up to you and they're like, hey, can you take this person out for the day? And you hear that one leader, I'm talking about leader B, that's like, oh, I just want to focus on my numbers for today. I just want to focus on myself. I want to just focus on my sales. That is the worst mentality to have. And every time you do that, actually you're going backwards, right? So the way that you do want to look at it, right? If I have an opportunity to train someone else that's not on my team, right? If I have the opportunity to take out an interview, right? Even when I'm like scared and I'm nervous to do that interview, I'm actually getting better, right? And the more that you repeat it, the better you get at it, right? And I'd rather practice on somebody, I'm not like practicing on somebody else's guy, but I'd rather have the opportunity to get closer to my goal, to get out of my comfort zone each time I'm making that choice. I'm actually getting better at retraining. I'm getting better at interviewing, which ultimately means I'm going to get out of the field faster, right? I'm going to get into my office sooner versus like avoiding that responsibility or just, I just want to focus on my numbers. I just want to focus on myself, right? Like, I love this, like, I love the person that's just like, they just say yes, like, yes, I'll take that person out. Yes, I'll do that interview. Yes, I'll, we'll run that impact. And obviously at that point, you want to be setting the pace and leading from the front in order to do those things, right? But again, in leadership, if you're not, right, and it's okay because in leadership, everyone, you qualify and then sometimes you have like your little dips, usually in the beginning, the first couple of months in leadership, but then after that, the field is second nature. But if you're not getting the results that you want, if you're not setting the pace and leading from the front, what are you doing to change that? Who are you? Are you like stalking the person that's like high rolling every single day and just be like, I just want to watch you. Like, I just want to go out in the field with you and I just want to see what you're doing so I could do that. And that's like, and again, that takes like, having to like lower your pride to do so, which is important. So, so just like not being the person that avoids responsibility, like that same quote, like doing the things that you feel like that you don't feel like doing is probably when you should do it the most, right? Like, oh, I don't feel like, going to the gym. I don't feel like cleaning. I don't feel like making up my bed. I don't feel like, I don't feel like whatever I don't feel like running an impact. I don't feel like doing that interview, right? Like that's when we should do it the most because that's ultimately when we're growing. So that's
what do you think like what's the advice you have for people who are afraid of making mistakes? Because I think a lot of the time when we talk about stretching out comfort zones, it just comes down to people taking risks on stuff that they're unfamiliar with. Because the training program, a lot of it is learn as you go. And I know many people that want to be 1000% perfectly prepared before they do stuff, sort of like that perfectionist attitude. But that can really be a hindrance to someone's growth when they're not willing to kind of learn as they go. So what advice would you give to people who are really afraid of doing something they're not feeling perfect at,
yeah.
knowing how much they can grow from it?
Mess it up. Like it just like who like whatever. Like it's like, or don't be afraid of messing it up if you do, like, like because what to work on for the next time, right? Like, and whatever it is that they don't feel perfect at, whether it's retraining or interviewing, right? Like we're like no one's gonna be perfect at it, right? And then but I promise you, if you don't do it, if you don't like take the shot, you're gonna regret it when you see that other person on someone's team or in 4 or 5 months from now when you're like, damn, like, I could have been so much further along in the process if I just, if I just took that interview, if I just, I got with that person that was setting the pace, I was running those impacts, I was a squeaky wheel, right? So you're going to regret it long term. So you might as well just get it done now, right? So
Yeah.
I would just say, like, don't be afraid to mess it up because it's kind of like, the first time we go out in the field and like pitch someone, like my first person I spoke to on Verizon, like I spoke so fast, I just wanted to get the pitch out, like, and I botched it, right? But who cares, right? Like you just get excited about it and have fun with it, and then learn from it, and apply it to the next person you speak to.
Yeah.
You always get a second shot.
I'll never forget the first time that I was given responsibility about like doing all the mapping for the whole office. It was the most frightening thing I've ever done in my life. Like I had to work a nice car ride and I had to plan all this stuff out. And I was like, oh my God, what if I fail? And then I realized like our business is sort of about letting people take responsibility. And if you screwed up, as long as your effort and your intentions are pure, and you're willing to learn from those mistakes and not make them over and over again, that's the fastest way to get better. So many companies, they don't give you the opportunity to even put yourself into leadership positions to make those mistakes. You just don't want to, because they're so afraid of those mistakes being made. So they just don't give people the responsibility. You got to wait and wait and wait. Here, it's kind of like learn as you go, fail forward. Take some risks. When someone says, "Hey, can you do this?" I would be the first one to say, "Yes, I want to do it myself," as opposed to be afraid. That'll take you so much longer to grow and get better. So I love that topic.
100%, absolutely. Okay, and I think this is the second to last one. So how you spend your downtime is just as important as the time you spend building your business, right? So we obviously spend a lot of time, building our businesses, building our teams, right? Just like the grind, and our off days are on Sunday, right? So like I can't stress this enough for especially for people in leadership, that like I'm not like my off days like are just as important as my time in the office, right? So whatever my habits are on a Saturday, and again, people could be guilty of this, right? Or I was in the past, like I'm spending my entire Sunday sleeping in, recovering from my Saturday. Like those are not the habits of a successful person, right? Like those are not the habits of someone that's disciplined, that that wants to be wants to be making $1 million a year, is sleeping in their entire Sunday and like completely neglecting all their chores, whether it's like their laundry, cleaning, getting themselves ready for the week, meal prepping, right? Whatever the case is, right? That's like it's so important. And even though the people I hang out with as well too. So not only my habits outside of the office, right? So like if anyone sees me outside of the office or sees me in the office, like I'm the same person, right? Like, and that's ultimately, you don't want to be someone that's like, oh, like when I'm at work, I act a certain way, but then when I'm not at work, like I'm not at work. So like, I'm different when I'm not here. But really, it realistically goes hand in hand, right? Because however your personal habits are, 100% is going to be, a reflection in your business and your finances, and your financial life as well too, right? So like the people I spend my time with. So I am uh, like me, like before I started this, like the friends that I had, I don't hang out with those people anymore, right? Because we're all guilty of like having those, having that friend group that maybe we just sit around and we're talking about unproductive things, and we're complaining about boyfriends, girlfriends, right? Or people that just want to get wasted, or or smoke weed or whatever the case is, and just like sit around and do nothing. Like that's not how like a successful person is going to spend their downtime, right? It's the most unproductive thing. I'm having unproductive conversations. Anyone that I'm spending time with on my Sundays, or anyone that you're spending your time with on your off time, like I want to make sure it's a positive and productive, right? And it's something that's going to add value to my life, right? Whether it's going to be spending time with my loved ones, right? Because I know that makes me happy, whether it's family, right? Significant others, whatever the case is, right? But also like I'm like being like be very, very, I want to say, I'm trying to think of the word. I want to say, as far as like who you pick that is in your circle on your off time, because it will ultimately affect your business life, right? So like if you're hanging out with friends and family, and I know for the friends that now I choose to hang out with, I'm speaking about their profession. I'm speaking about what's going on in the stock market, right? What are some goals that you have? Like what's the next step for you in your business, right? Oh, you don't have any? Okay, you want to figure them out, no problem, right? So here are some ideas, right? Here are some ideas that I have, right? And we're having like positive, productive, like educational conversations. I'm not saying like you have to be like work all the time, but I know on my downtime, if I'm spending time with people that don't support me, or that are negative and that complain, I'm all probably gonna, pick up some of those trends, right? I think Larry was speaking about it, right? If you move in, with someone that is like overweight and has like bad eating habits, right? And you live with that, your roommates with that person, chances are you're probably gonna start picking up not like all their habits, but a little bit of that. But a little bit of that can affect like, can affect your situation, right? But if I'm living with someone that's like physically fit, has good eating habits, I'm probably gonna be like, oh, like I should probably start, paying attention to what I eat, and like, like exercising or taking care of my physical, my well-being as well too. And that's also important on your downtime, right? Like using that to take care of your body, or yourself, your mental state, right? Like educating yourself, like if you like reading, if you like watching videos, right? I'm not saying like, as far as like exercising, you have to be like a professional bodybuilder, but it's important for, for us as people, especially like, like business owners in training, to make sure that our our physical well-being, we're taking care of ourselves, exercising, it releases endorphins, it decreases depression, right? So like if you don't like going to the gym, like getting out, like going, going for walks, going on a bike ride, right? Going, whatever it is to kind of get yourself some exercise. And I'm not saying every single day, a couple times a week, like that's important as well too. And who you're spending your time with is so crucial.
There's that quote where it says, "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future."
Mm-hmm.
That one's always kind of like, whoa. And then, the other one by Jim Rohn is, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And, it's tough because we have friends we grew up with, people that we're used to hanging out with. And, I have my buddies I went to college with, I don't disown them. It's not like I delete their number in my phone. I'm
Yeah.
just more, aware of the habits they have, and kind of like you can see where they're going based on what they're doing today. And it's up to you. When we're kids, we don't have the choice of sort of what school we go to and who are around. We can't choose our parents, but once we become adults, we have the choice of, who we spend time with, both in a professional setting and a personal setting. And so, yes, of course, we all have to control ourselves, but it is also very, very important of who we decide to associate with, and kind of what their path and their plan is for the future and their habits today. If you're not careful, no matter what you tell yourself, oh, I'm not going to do that. You hang out with people with bad habits, eventually those habits bleed into what you're doing. So really, really good point.
100%. Yeah. So it's just like building your business, but you're not in the office physically. You're still working on yourself, right? So who you keep around you, you got to be very mindful, for sure. Absolutely. So last one. I don't know if any can read this, but remember, just going throughout the process, right? When things get, when things get hard, because they will in leadership, right? They will throughout the entire program. It's inevitable. Remember that we have seasons, right? And seasons are only temporary, right? So one thing that I want to kind of address to anyone that's listening and in leadership, or I talk to my guys about this as well too. If you're trying to you're trying to be successful, and that's the same quote that comes, like, nothing good comes easy, right? So I remember, like, the first couple of, like, people that I built on my team, I was just like, all right, it's just a matter of time until I qualify for management, right? Like, these are the people I open up my office with, right? Like, chances are the first team that you build and the first couple leaders that you build, they're probably, chances are, right, if they do great, but chances are that they're not going to be the people that you like promote into management in your own office, right? So, like, there are going to be relationships that you build with people. There's going to be time that you invest with people that you think that are going to be like the next owner. They're going to be the next best example, right? And they disappoint you for whatever reasons that they are, whether it's personal, whether it's something that we did wrong, right? It's it ends up kind of hurting us more, which is also another reason why some leaders that actually don't make it to the end zone in management, because it ends up kind of discouraging them so much that they can't, they don't want to make the choice to kind of go through that again. But the one thing I love about our industry, right, that it only takes a couple of weeks to change your situation, as long as, like I was saying before, that you're learning from though, from those situations. You're learning from, maybe someone that didn't work out or whatever the case is. It only takes a few weeks to kind of turn that entire, situation around, to kind of to rebuild that next leader, right? To kind of re-promote that next person, if you're giving it 100%, right? So if if your mentality's there, if you have the intentions of doing it, right? The same saying, when something goes down, the only way it could go is up, right? It's the same exact thing in our business. But the real question that you want to ask, like, are your goals as important enough that you'll be willing to go through that as many times as needed to get yourself to where you want to be, right? So I think that that's huge, to understand that, like, nothing is permanent. Pain is only temporary, like, in our industry, for the leaders, that, like, when you're building your teams, like, you're going to fall in love with people, you're going to lose them, right? But you got to keep falling in love with those people, right? Because personally, I know how I trick myself when I'm, because again, we all go through it as managers as well too, right? Like, when I'm sitting down doing those interviews, I'm like, I'm every single person I'm interviewing, I'm like, who's the next, who's the next Mike, who's the next Van, right? Who's the next Jessica, right? Who's the next me, or whatever the case is, right? But, like, if I'm not, like, getting excited about every single person I'm sitting down with, right? Like, I'm not going to go into it with the intentions, and make sure I kind of get myself back on the horse. So remember that that's only temporary, and it's only a couple of weeks until you can turn your situation around, as long as you're learning from those other situations.
There's very few, if I don't even know if there's any other businesses in the world where you can just go from no
Yeah.
situation to absolutely kicking ass. We call it going from the poorhouse to the penthouse
Hmm.
in such a short period of time. I've seen leaders, lose their whole teams, go from, oh my God, they're almost in their push weeks, and they go down to one leader, or they promoted a leader or two in their team, and then those people didn't work out. And you can kind of see it, the discouragement, or like, oh man, what if that happens again? And I've seen those people go from nothing to 4, 6, 7 weeks later, they're back into a better situation. But obviously that has to start with the person going into it, understanding there's a law of averages to everything that we do, right? So just because what you wanted the outcome to be for that person wasn't the outcome, the law of averages doesn't really care about that. It's like the field. When you get a customer that you really thought was your customer and they end up backing out last second, we've all been there, right? You got two choices. You either keep thinking about that customer the rest of the day and you apply that negative energy to the rest of the people you talk to, or you say, hey, the customer didn't work out. I gave him my best shot. The no was a no, didn't work out. I got to give my best effort to the next person, because those next customers, just like the next people on your team, have no association with the people that didn't work out, right? It's like getting out of a relationship. Someone broke your heart. They did something that maybe caused you to lose trust in them. And then you go to the next person, you don't trust them before you even know them. It's like that causes a lot of friction, and it really eliminates the possibility of having pure, great relationships with people. Is kind of like holding grudges from past experiences against new experiences. You got to have a short-term memory, learn from it, but have a short-term memory and get back on the horse. And all of you guys do it in the field every day. You have a short-term memory. Sometimes you got to do that with team building, where you spend a lot of time, you invested, you did the dinners, you bought them stuff, you met their family. And you know what? They either weren't motivated, they couldn't stick with their goals, they didn't have the work ethic. It just wasn't a good fit. It doesn't mean you don't apply that same effort, because you got to go through a lot of people to find that 10%, right? We talk about all the time, 7% employees, the other 93%. So what Olivia is talking about is just not carrying the weight of the negative experiences with you, having that optimistic, fresh mindset with each person you sit down with, because you never know who's going to be your next superstar. And if you don't have the patience as you're building your crew to be ready for those people, you're going to miss out. So I think it's a really good point. All right, Olivia, you ready for some questions?
Sure.
All right, so we got 3 questions so far in the chat, and please fire away any more questions you guys got. So first question is it important to remind yourself of how far you've grown and developed, or is it a hindrance to your ability to continue growing? So basically, as you're going through the negatives, is it important to remind yourself of what you've already done?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Cause sometimes, I mean, we could be like our biggest critics, right? And we could be like the person that like we break our own selves down, right? But it's really important to get that reflection and being like, wow, like before this, like I wouldn't have the confidence to walk up to a random stranger and introduce myself. And then 30 seconds later, they're putting their social into my, into my tablet, right? Like that's cool, right? That's cool that, you're able to do that and you learn that skill, or take that interview, or, being able to like motivate, or train people. Like that's like a cool, like definitely reflecting is huge, right? And for me personally, it it helps you keep going.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things where like, even if you had something bad happen and you failed, don't ever lose your confidence. It is important to remember your victories, and remember, you interview any athlete that loses a close game. The ones who are successful, they understand they're capable of winning. So it's just about really sticking with it, learning from why they lost, learning from the negatives, but never losing your confidence and belief in yourself to do what you're capable of, and reminding yourself of what you've already done. So if you can do it before, you should be better. You should be able to do it again more and more, even more successfully. So that's a really good point. Now, here's another question. So it's easy to get 1% better when you first start the business, but how do you keep getting 1% better as you move up further down the line?
So yes, because you're given guidance of what you need to do when you first start the business, right? It's like, okay, you qualify for leadership. This is what you have to do. You do your teach backs, right? And then the next step, when you are in leadership, that's kind of when you basically earn that jersey, and you're now in charge and taking control of your own growth, right? So like, it's kind of like you have to take control of, like your own situation with networking with the girls and guys that are building the biggest teams, or really are working on some things that that you're not good at, that maybe you're afraid to learn, like the interviews, right? Or running impacts, whatever the case is, right? So like it's really like the managers they're not gonna run after you, and they're not gonna be like, all right, like like let me obviously we're gonna educate on leadership, but we're not gonna run after you to take control of like wanting to be in front of the room and wanting to take out the interview, because somebody else will always step up, right? So you really have to make the choice. Is that going to be you, right? Because we're not going to force you to do it, right? So I guess really when I was talking about like coming out of your comfort zone, like how do you get 1% better after, is just like do the things that you're afraid to do. Just keep doing the things that you're afraid to do, and that's how you'll ultimately get better.
Yeah. Seems like just, no matter how far you get in your career, always remaining a student. It doesn't matter, when you're new, you don't know anything. So you're so eager to learn. All information's exciting. Your ego isn't as big because you haven't done anything yet. As your ego might grow, sometimes your student mentality shrinks because you feel like, well, I'm supposed to be good at this. And you forget to always stay humble and
Mhm.
realize, hey, even though I'm good, I'm still not at the level that I want to be at. There's still people kicking my butt that I can really learn from. And you don't look at them like they're, better human beings. You're just like, they're better than me. They know more than me. So I got to pursue knowledge continuously. Doesn't matter how far you get. If you stay studious, you'll always continue to improve. We got another question here. How do you manage relationships and building your business on your downtime? So when you're not at the office, how do you manage, building those relationships in a business setting or, personal, whatever you got to do to keep building it, even when you're not working?
Yeah, I feel like your guys on your crew, like they always see you like in the office, right? Like, it's if we're like leaders like building our teams, like they always see you in the office and like they're, when they first start, right? And then and again, if you're a top performer, they see you, first one there, taking control of the morning, taking control of, the PM, whatever the case is, right? So I guess like managing your time outside, Sundays, right? Like I'm building my business, right? Like like I'm doing things, that I would do with myself, right? Or I would do, with maybe some of my family members or friends, right? Like with, with my team members, right? Obviously, I'm building appropriate relationships, right? Like me being the team leader, like I'm not like, going out and like, clubbing with people on my team, right? Like I'm not going, bar hopping with people on my team. Like that's inappropriate because now I just crossed that line from being that coach and mentor to being that friend, right? And they saw me kind of drop, kind of lower, I don't want to say like lower my standards, but almost kind of like drop my guard and, being more of like a friend versus more of like a coach and mentor. But at the end of the well, first point, right, our relationship with it stems from business, right? But then I'm going to also build that personal relationship with them as well, too, right? Like going to the beach, right? Getting your nails done, or for the guys, like going to pick out suits, right? Meeting their significant others, right? On Sundays, right? Grabbing dinners at the end of the night, right? Team nights are obviously important, but you don't get that much one-on-one time on team nights, right? Like, doing one-on-one dinners with your guys or breakfasts, coming in early, spending time outside of the office so they can get to know you as a person outside of the office, right? So when you're doing like your errands, like it's cool when you can like involve your people on your team doing your errands as well too. Like, oh, like you have to run to the mall, like so do I. You want to go together, right? Like doing things like that. And they're like, oh, like not only like they're like really serious about their goals in the office, but they're kind of cool like outside of the office as well too, right? So now you just got that person locked into you, times two, right? Because they see that you're a human and you're not just like this like machine in the office, just like serious all the time.
Yeah.
But also making sure that you don't cross that line, right? As well too,
Yeah.
making inappropriate relationship.
What I think is important for people to understand is like the training program is really, it's like a short-term push. Like it's not this, I'm going to do these things for 5 years. It's like, of course, building relationships and spending time outside of the business with people is important. But I think some people, they look at this and they go, all right, 6 months, I got to be really into what I'm doing. I got to be really into my people. I got to spend time with them. I got to build a strong core. I got to build a foundation. And you'll see certain leaders, they're kind of half-assing it. They don't really talk to their guys on Sundays. They don't really spend time with their people. They do sort of the bare minimum of what they're supposed to do. And it takes them way longer to get ahead versus people who are really like, you know what? I'm putting a date on this thing. If I'm not promoted to management within 8 months, then I'm moving on, or whatever the date is. And during those 8 months, they're super focused. It's kind of like they're in law school or they're medical school. They're not trying to do everything at once. They're really focused on team building and still, doing things they need to do in their lives. But you can just see the difference, right? With people, how top leaders in our business, how they look at their Sundays, how they look at their teams versus people who kind of struggle. They're just not really focused as much as they could be. And really, that's a big gap between the people who are successful and not. Here's another question. We got a couple more. So how do you maintain enthusiasm about your team and their development, especially when they're growing slower than you'd like them to grow?
Okay. So I remember this and I still have to check myself, right? So there's gonna be some things that you're really good at that other people are not good at, right? So I know like personally, when I first started, I was really good in the field, right? Like I picked up the field really, really fast. Like it was second nature to me. And it took me so long to, really, kind of build a solid core because I didn't understand why people were not, they weren't as good as me starting off. So I would just be like, oh, this person sucks, right? And it's like, no, right? Like maybe they're just not as confident as, as I was, or they're not as confident as you were coming into it, or, whatever it is that you're super confident with. Like everyone has different learning curves, right? Like like we have to mold and develop people, and we have to instill confidence into them, right? And then sometimes people need you to believe in them more than they believe themselves, and they'll do things that they never even thought they could do just because you told them that they could do it.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
I think it just comes with like building people, right? Like it's like, like we like people take time. Like after, like I'm not having like these crazy critical conversations with people on my team on their second week about like, I guess setting the pace and like, I don't know, like, I guess like ringing the bell or, whatever it is. Like being very mindful of how I'm having those conversations, because I have to educate them, and I need I need a solid couple of weeks to kind of mold and educate that person. I can't just expect people to kind of get it right away. It's great when it happens, but it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah. Last
Hopefully
question.
that answers.
That's great. The last question, we're getting a lot of them, and we'll make sure that Olivia is accessible after the call. So sometimes when we're talking about Sundays and spending time with your people, this question is, if you have someone on your team where their family is already kind of like nagged on the fact that they're working so much, and then you're trying to spend time with them on a Sunday, could make it even worse. How do you kind of balance it if you want to get with certain people on Sundays to build a relationship when they have significant others and people that they're already wanting to spend time with, that really are kind of thinking, well, it's their time, not more time for you. How do you balance that with certain people?
I mean, like I'm not pushing it at that point, but like, I mean, if I don't want to make it sound like it's work, like, like work. Like, I want to see you on Sunday. Like, I'm going to make it sound like, hey, like let's grab brunch, like let's go grab some, let's go grab some food, or let's grab some lunch really quick, or do you want to grab dinner? And I'm like, bring your girlfriend, bring your boyfriend, right? Like, maybe you can meet my boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Or whatever the case is, right? And like just like make it like, like make it like that. It's not like a burden, or like a job for them showing up. Like, you're making it fun. But if you're going into it's like, oh, I feel like they're working because I'm taking all their time. It's like, no, like if you're going to be in a long-term relationship with this person, right? Like I want them to feel comfortable, and like I don't want them to feel like I don't want them to feel uncomfortable hanging out with me, that they're like, oh my God, like I have to be like professional, like we're at work right now, right? Like have them bring their significant other and make it like a fun, occasion.
Yeah, that's great. Well, guys, we got a lot of great questions asked today. I know there's some more questions firing in. Olivia, you crushed it today. Another great topic, another great speaker, and you covered a lot of good information. We have tons of notes. I know we're going to be posting this video in Slack. And Olivia, she gave away some of your information at the beginning of the call. If you want to get another call where you can ask Olivia more questions, please reach out to your owner. I'm sure she'll make herself available to do another round of Q&A, because I know we're getting more questions than we can even handle. But Olivia, thank you so much. Great topic, great subject. I think it applies to everybody's situation. And guys, we will see you guys next Tuesday, same time, same place. Olivia, great job.
Thank you. So I hope it helped everyone. Thank you so much, Van, for your help, and let's crush it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Have a good week. Take care.